Welcome to the Digital Handshake Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Jorgensen, and we're pleased to be with Dr. Kristy Hamilton from Houston, Texas. How are you, Dr. Hamilton?
Doing great. Delighted to be here.
Fantastic. Well, I've been looking forward to having you on our podcast for some time. There's a number of plastic surgery colleagues that I have that are friends of yours, and so I've been really looking forward to spending some time together, getting to know you. What I'd like to do is just start out as kind of like, have you always wanted to be a doctor?
Always. I was the one that had the doctor plate kit as like a toddler, like doing checkups on my family members. So it was just, I wanted to be a pediatrician originally because that was the only doctor I knew, but I loved mine. And then as I learned more about all the different types of ways you could be a doctor, plastic surgery made sense to me because of the problem solving, and I love anatomy, and the rest is history.
So how did you find your way to Houston, Texas? Are you originally a Texan, or what brought you to Houston?
I'm one of the Texans that got here as fast as I could. Wasn't born here. I'm Canadian, actually. So
Okay.
I grew up in Toronto. My mom's Canadian. My dad's from the UK. And I lived in Houston from 6th grade through 10th grade. So my parents were in oil and gas. That made sense that at some point you're going to end up in Texas for sure if you're in that industry. And I fell in love with it. I loved living in Texas. I feel like there's always been the atmosphere here that I think amplifies that American message of making your way and living your dream. I think Texas takes that to a whole other level. And so there was something about the energy of this place I wanted to get back to. So returned to Canada, finished school there, ended up going to Vanderbilt for undergraduate, and then made my way to Baylor College of Medicine. And that's where I did all my medical training. So I was on a mission to go further and further south until I ended up back here.
Well, now in Houston, obviously you're a very successful plastic surgeon. You're, quite frequently in the media and the news, being cited for, various sort of perspectives and your vantage point on plastic surgery and trends in plastic surgery. Talk to me about sort of the landscape, the market there in Houston. Is the aesthetic patient different sort of in that part of the country, or sort of, describe for us your patient population?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was interviewed in the New York Times about this, and I think the expectation the journalist had was going to be everything's bigger in Texas, the breasts are bigger, the booties are bigger, everything's fuller. Houston is a very dynamic city. It's an international city. It's a very vibrant city, and my patient population are patients I think very similar to me. They're working moms. They're people that are here on assignment. They are they may be stay-at-home moms. They're juggling 3 kids. They're trying to be active. They're trying to be healthy. And so that type of patient, they're looking for elegant results, elevated results, not necessarily something that's extremely voluptuous and certainly not cartoonish. And so when it comes to breast implants, for example, I would say maybe not everything's bigger in Texas. So I do a lot of more subtle refinements when it comes to surgery, and certainly very natural looking.
So I'm relatively new to Texas, originally from California, and here at Media PSC, we're based in Dallas. One thing I will note is I was surprised how many people here, in particular, folks are just fit and very athletic, very into Pilates, yoga, weightlifting, eating healthy, even though there's, active, social lifestyle and restaurants and things of that sort. But, for the most part, people do a great job here in Texas, at least in the Dallas area, in staying active and staying fit. And I imagine it's similar in Houston. Are you finding that, especially with your patients? And then sort of as these athletic patients are, coming into your practice, are there specific considerations that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I have professional athletes that are part of my practice. And then I also have kind of what you described, people more like ourselves. We're weekend warriors or Pilates moms trying to get to the gym as much as we can. And I think I would posit that this is a national shift. I think there's been an increased emphasis placed on protein consumption and resistance training, whether that's weightlifting or Pilates, and therefore more emphasis on muscle function. And I think that broader trend has resonated with patients like coming into my practice. Those patients are very much in line with that philosophy on how to live a healthy lifestyle. So then when we're talking about plastic surgery, it's like, well, how can we achieve these aesthetic goals, but make sure that what we're doing is still very much in line with this lifestyle? And so when we're doing breast augmentation, we're trying to minimally disrupt the muscle or avoid disruption at all. We want them to be able to get back to the gym ideally in a week, so they can keep on doing what they love to do, lift up their kids, be back in the office, whatever it is that they may want to do.
So you had mentioned, breast augmentation and one of the sort of techniques, if you will, that's in vogue is this preservation breast augmentation. And I know many surgeons across the country are beginning to, offer this quote technique to their patients. Is this something that you've incorporated? Is this something that, you believe in, or is this a fad?
So I've been into preservation breast augmentation well before it was a term. I was interested in placing implants in front of the muscle. And this is, if you go back historically looking at it, this is how implants were originally attempted to be placed, but with the technology at the time and the way that we were doing that operation, it didn't go very well. And so then there was this shift to going under the muscle. Times have changed. Technology has changed. Surgical techniques have changed. And so now I offer different ways of going in front of the muscle for many patients. And Preservé is kind of like this latest evolution in a more minimally invasive way of placing an implant selectively above the muscle. It's not for every patient, but I will go to great lengths to try to make a patient an in front of the muscle candidate if they, instead of going underneath the muscle. One of the other ways that we can convert more patients to being in front of the muscle and therefore preserving their function is by adding padding. So we can debate this, and certainly plastic surgeons do all the time. But to me, the only downside of going in front of the muscle can be for some patients implant visibility. And so how do we work around that? If I have someone who comes in who is loves doing Pilates and doesn't want her breast implants to move when she works out, we now have options of transferring fat to the breast, so I can use that to camouflage cleavage lines. What if she's ultra fit and doesn't have an ounce of fat on her to liposuction? Now we have an off-the-shelf fat-like product or fat-derived product called Alloclay, and I can pull that. And so now we have a lot more ways of making patients in front of the muscle candidates by just adding the padding in specific areas if they weren't born with it or didn't have it at this time point.
What % of your female breast augmentation patients are opting for this more, what I'll call smaller implant in front of the muscle technique versus, being in Texas, larger implants, right? Kind of more of a beach look, kind of more of the Baywatch look, if you will, that we saw in the past?
So I would say regardless of how I'm placing the implant, and we can discuss technique for sure. Say an average implant order size in my practice is 250, which means I'm doing a lot that are in the 150, 185 range. And then I'm doing a number that are in the kind of the mid 300s. Uncommon for me to be doing implants in the 400s range, and extremely uncommon for me to be doing it higher than that. But I had a patient who came from the Midwest the other day. She was 6 feet tall, 600 cc's, looked conservative, appropriate. She's professional. So it's really about taking into consideration the patient's anatomy, what their goals are, what their starting point is. And so, we throw out number and size, but it matters tremendously on what the patient's anatomy looks like.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. And let's talk a little bit more about you and your practice. How long have you been in practice there in Houston? And is there something that you did in the beginning from a marketing standpoint that you thought was like quite smart to kind of get going and get busy?
Yeah, it's like interesting when you look at like when you started, right? It's like I've been like in healthcare for 16 years. I've been in private practice for 6. And I think something that we couldn't even really start in training, but I amplified once I got out, social media, that, I mean, this is now like, old hat, old news, everyone's doing this now. But I found that from the very beginning, that was a way during the pandemic, to get in front of patients, express authentically my philosophy on plastic surgery, what it is that I love, what I like to do. And so I think that has been a successful strategy for me. And at the time, I wouldn't even have considered it a strategy. It was just me kind of putting myself out there and sharing my thoughts. But that's been wonderful because that's the type of patient that I'm attracting, someone that, my philosophy like already resonates with them and it makes sense to them. And so then they come in. And so for consultations, I'm already much more aligned with my patients than I think I otherwise would be if we didn't have social media.
Plastic surgery and social media. And what I have found is where there's something that's worked for a particular practice or doctor, others will quickly follow. I'll give you an example. Right now, everybody's doing this whole sit down and pretending like they're getting interviewed on a Netflix documentary. Have you seen that one? Right?
Yes, I have a funny story.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Like really? Okay. Now everybody's doing it. The other is, throwing implants at the doctor or their staff and they got to like blindly guess like the size. Right? That's another one where I'm kind of like, okay, somebody did that once and now everybody's doing it. But for whatever reason, like they kind of go viral. And, can you think of a particular post that maybe you guys did in your practice that, for whatever reason, it went viral for you?
So there's one that stands out immediately. And it's like you can't know necessarily what these are going to be. This is one actually my nanny put together. She made this at home. And I was like, she showed it to me and she wasn't going to post it because it's about my child. And you could just see her my 2-year-old's like little chubby, like hands and arms. And what it was she has this baby stroller. And in it is not just the doll, but it's all of her most precious possessions. So basically anything that's pink or sparkly and 2 Motiva breast implants that she got her hands on. These are like these are her treasures. And so she calls them her squishies and she keeps them in there next to her doll. And so I saw this, I was like, this is hilarious. Like, I don't know if you know how funny this is. Put it out there. It's like hundreds of thousands of views. Like everyone's like, this resonates, you did. And I was like, okay, like people understand, like kids like know, like, I guess, really does feel like a breast to her.
It makes no sense, but for those of us that if you've handled a breast implant, it's some item in your hand for whatever reason, like you can't put it down because it's just like this very interesting like texture and feel. And so I get it. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So
it
beyond,
feels nice.
Well, I was going to say, so beyond social media, one of the things that I was going to make note of, and I always, did a little bit of research before we started our podcast today, is I was really impressed with your website. And I thought that you guys have done a really good job. And I point this out for some of our other plastic surgeons, maybe our younger plastic surgeons that are looking to start their own practice, what have you. And, talk to me a little bit about the thought and the curation that went behind your website, because I think it's really well put together.
Thank you. So it's like we've had multiple iterations of this. So it's definitely not the first attempt. And I think as we were rebranding, we were just trying to be really thoughtful about like what does our practice stand for? Like, why would there's amazing plastic surgeons out there all over the place, all over the world, and people travel now. Like, what is it about our practice that stands out? And so we tried to be just really intentional about it. Athleticism is important. Muscle function is important. So having, beauty with purpose, beauty that performs. That is a theme of our practice. And then in line with that is an emphasis on recovery. It's one thing to have this beautiful result. Of course, like every plastic surgeon is gonna be like, I got amazing results, but like, can we get you back to real life really, really quickly and really, really comfortably, and like putting like a premium on everything that happens after surgery. So I think those are hallmarks of my practice, because I do face, nose, breast, and body, but that's like what kind of brings everything together regardless of what surgery I'm actually doing. And so when we figured that out, then the website kind of followed.
The branding, the photography, the videos. I think you're even like a model in a couple there on the site. So that's really cool. Well, to wrap up here, I wanted to play a little bit of a game. It's kind of like what's hot, what's not in plastic surgery. So it's kind of like an either or. You just give me what, for you is like at the end of the day is kind of tried and true, your fave. Okay. So
Okay.
facelift, deep plane or SMAS?
I was trained predominantly in SMAS techniques, and they're beautiful results. Actually, like as I see like some of my older results come back, like they definitely hold up. I think for patients that require a more profound lift, I think I get a stronger, more dramatic lift with deep plane, because we're doing more release of the ligaments. But you can absolutely do a beautiful SMAS lift as well.
Got to pick one or the other. Under the muscle, or are we going over the muscle? Breast augmentation.
This is like easy. I'm like if I can, I'm going in front of the muscle every time.
Botox, still the king, or are the others just as good?
I offer Botox and Dysport in my practice. I think there are some that I think that are better than others. Botox for sure still has that name brand recognition. That's what patients ask for predominantly.
Regenerative aesthetics. Is it the future or is it false hope?
It's the future and the present. This is what we need to be thinking about as plastic surgeons. And I think that's why fat transfer is really taken off. Like, we need to do more than just make things look good. We need to be restoring function, maintaining function. We need to be making tissue quality better. So taking fat, which has our own natural stem cells, and doing it as part of your facelift, to me, that's like essential, just like the same way that I will apply nanofat after a CO2 laser. It's like we need to improve the quality of the tissues that we're working with. And that is going to enhance our surgical results as well.
Okay, we got a couple more for you. Peptides, is it a breakthrough or is it just a buzzword?
Peptides are just like a couple amino acids strung together. So like, you're full of peptides, I'm full of peptides. So like, yeah. So like from that sense, like this thought that like peptide, all things are peptide powered. Like, yes, that is buzzy. Like, people maybe don't realize that like we're all full of peptides, but like peptides, like GLP-1s, incredible drug, right? I mean, like, no question, that has absolutely revolutionized like health in this country, and just in plastic surgery, certainly, with everyone having the sustained weight loss. Now, when it comes to some of these other ones, some of them may be good. Some of these experimental ones, there are 0 human trials, like 0. Not one, not like a bad study or like a not a well thought out study, like 0. So it's not that there isn't something there, but like, some people are running a research, experiment on themselves, and we'll find out.
All right. Lastly, in the practice there, if I was to go in the fridge and open it up, are we getting Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi?
We are getting various kinds of sparkling water and energy drinks. We are Alani sparkling water girls over here. That's who we are.
All right. Fair enough. Well, it's been super fun having you on the podcast today. We want to say thank you to our sponsors, Media PSC, for making this possible. And again, we want to say thank you to Dr. Kristy Hamilton of Houston, Texas, for being on the show with us today. And for that, we'll see you on our next episode.